Welcome back, everybody, to another episode today. We are blessed to have Nic Wyse with us today. Nic is a real estate agent in Goshen with ReMax Results, and he's a member of all these different boards, and he's really an important guy. So we brought him in here today. He's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of background in real estate, he's seen what's happening with the new law changes and everything with real estate, and so Nic's going to enlighten us today on some of the changes, what they mean for home buyers, what they mean maybe even for real estate agents, and then nationally anyhow, and then how that can affect Indiana real estate. So, Nic, thanks for being here today and sharing your wisdom with us.
Well, I hope it is wisdom. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate that you asked me on. Glad to have the opportunity to help.
Yeah, so describe kind of your background, what led you into real estate. I remember when you got into real estate. I couldn't tell you what year, but I remember inspecting your house.
Yeah.
When you bought it, and then shortly after that, you went into real estate.
That's right. So, yeah, it was kind of the process of going through. I moved back to Indiana from Sarasota, Florida, and I was back for a little bit before we bought a house. Had to establish and get some credit built back up. But we bought a house with a good friend of the family and of myself, Cindy Yoder, with ReMax there, and she has since retired. But during the course of, well, for one, we drug her through about 40 or 50 houses, so we were that buyer. But at any rate, during the process, I was like, I kind of like this, how this unfolds. And I was in between things. I had gone back to school and got a second degree. Thought I wanted to be a teacher. Thought I wanted to be a professor. And in the course of that, they're like, yeah, you need about 6 more years of education, and then maybe you'll find a job somewhere in the U.S. You're not going to choose where. And I'm like, pause. let's switch things up. So basically talking with Cindy, and then met with some of the ownership there at ReMax Results. They said, I'll never forget Larry Phillips, who's also now retired, stepped out in the hallway, but I could still hear him. And he goes, I think we've got a winner there. And I thought, wow, that, if he thinks that, and if she thinks that, maybe this is a career for me. So I jumped in with both feet, really had to sink or swim right away. I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't have a part-time job. So it was all or nothing. And then, the first time that I remember really meeting you and Donna was at, I was doing an open house for Cindy Yoder. That's something new agents do a lot. They'll cover an open house for a seasoned agent. Mm-hmm. And you guys came in and did a little film thing for me and helped with some snacks and whatnot. And I used that and then put that on Google. And, part of my marketing was from that little film that you guys had done. So that was really tremendous. And it helped me get going and feel confident. So
yeah,
well, appreciated that.
Those I like what you said about what Larry had said. Mm-hmm. Those little things really, they go a long way when you're struggling and trying to find your way.
And very unsure, like, can I do this? I've never done this in my life. And at that point I was, in my early 30s, and I'm like, it's a whole different life change for me. This is nothing that I've done before. I've been in the restaurant industry. Just had never done sales. And mm-hmm. So I didn't know if I could sell. That's the only way to find out is to try. And after about a year, I was like, I think I got this. I think I got the hang of it.
It's a big jump going into an industry that is not like a steady 9 to 5. You're going to get this income every week, et cetera, et cetera. You talked previously about your experience as a business owner, though, mm-hmm. and you got to think that prepared you a lot for real estate because you're always serving the public. You're trying to make them satisfied with the product you're giving them. So that Quiznos. Was a place that was in Florida?
That was in Sarasota, Florida. Okay. Yep, right downtown. It's no longer there. There's not many Quiznos left in the United States. They're usually in an airport if you find one or something like that. But I had done some cooking when I was in college too, and I always liked that. That's part of my personality is I want to please. I'm a pleaser, kind of that servant mentality, and I wanted everything to be great, and that did definitely carry over into real estate. That desire to just give everything that I can and make this about the client, the customer, and give them the best experience that they can get. So that absolutely helped.
Well, and it shows too that being successful as an agent is more about relationship building, serving, not necessarily you're a brilliant technician or every law in the books or anything like that. It's more about just customer service. And
it is. It's about communication with people, not going into hiding. I think there's some agents. I hear that from other people when I said, hey, why didn't you hire the agent that you bought this house with? Why am I listing it and not them? Well, like, we never heard from them again. The deal was over and we never heard from them again. Not how's it going? Did everything work out with this? It's just nothing. They ghost. And that's something that I've heard at our ReMax office before is don't be an order taker. When the market's hot, Somebody could just come in and be like, we want to buy a house. Great. Here it is. Let me write it up. Boom. There you go. See you later. It's about building relationships. It's about being in your community. I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but I've told a number of agents this. If you're a new agent, the best thing you can do is, go ahead and spend your money on advertising and marketing, because it does help, but get out in your community. If there's something you can volunteer for, go volunteer for it. Everywhere you go, everyone you meet is going to eventually ask you, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm in real estate. Do you know anybody looking to buy or sell?
Yeah.
That little question can go a long ways,
Oh, yeah.
It opens up the whole bag, and, oh, not me, but my cousin is. Oh, can I get their number? There you go. There's a lead. That was free, and you gave your time, you gave back to the community. People recognize that, and they want to reward you for it, I think.
Yeah. Awesome advice. So recently there's been a lot of changes nationally. There's a lot of confusion out there. I've read a lot about it. I still don't understand most of it, but you've been on you're on the Elkhart, or you're the president of the Elkhart board.
Immediate past president,
past
which means
president.
I only
Okay.
have to show up when I want to now. So.
What an awesome place to be in. But so you were kind of at the heart, the point of the spear, so to speak, in dealing with these new changes. So why don't you, the best you can, talk about those changes, how they're affecting real estate agents, where this came from, and how it affects buyers.
Yeah. So the big change nationally, it actually doesn't go into effect until August 22nd, but Indiana's been out in front of this kind of from the jump, really. Mm-hmm. We made changes before this lawsuit ever got settled. We were already starting to divulge what buyers agents get paid. We were putting that on, every time you have a handout that you give to a buyer, that's got to say what your commission is on there. So we got out ahead of a lot of this because I think we saw some of the writing was on the wall. Something was going to change, whether that lawsuit was won or lost. There was going to be some changes. Yeah. But what it essentially divulged to is, before we're allowed to go and show a house now, we have to have a buyer's agency agreement in place with that buyer. And it's going to stipulate on there the maximum commission that we can receive. It notes that commission will be negotiated between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. And to our best of our efforts, we will get paid through the selling agency. When they sell a home, they list it at such commission, and they've usually got a place, it's on the listing agreement, says this is what a buyer's agent's going to get paid. But we are no longer able to publish that in the multiple listing service, the MLS. It can't go in there at all. We can't link to it. We can't certainly have it Facebook on there. So before you go show a house now, you have to have a conversation, or you should have a conversation with that listing agent and say, what is the buyer's agency commission on this? Then when you go to show it, you have to have, again, that written document signed by the buyer. And here's where it's a little bit of a struggle, because literally they might be someone that just called you and said, hey, we just saw a house in our neighborhood. We want to go see this house in our neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Well, here, I just need you to sign this document that says you agree to pay me X amount of dollars if you buy that house. By the way, I'm going to try and negotiate to get that from the seller. Well, that's not a very comforting feeling. Try to negotiate to get that from the seller. What if you can't? Now, of course, that can be amended, and I think that's what a lot of agents will probably do if they need to. Hey, they're not offering me what the compensation we agreed to on here was. I'm not going to ask you as the buyer to pay for it. I'm going to lower that amount. We're going to amend this agreement that we've got. We're going to move forward that way. But there's no guarantees. So when the buyer's looking at that house and they say, hey, this is the only house, we're just looking at one real quick, it could devolve into a situation where they would have to pay their agent to be able to buy that house. That's scary for a lot of buyers, especially if they're not serious. They just want to look.
Right.
They just want to see what's out there in the market. Well, now we've got this agreement that we have to sign by both parties before we step foot in that door. So that's an interesting thing. The other step an agent has to take now is when they submit an offer, they have to include, there's two different forms that can be used, but there's an addendum that they would submit typically that says, this is the commission. We're sending this in with our offer, so this is what we're expecting to get paid for this. And we're expecting that to come from the selling side. So without that addendum, again, they've left it wide open. If they haven't made that call and they haven't included that addendum, you could literally have a buyer's agent that's not going to get paid, or they're going to have to get paid from their buyers if they're going to get paid at all. And that's a hard sell.
Definitely.
They're coming up with their mortgage, their down payment, they're coming up with their closing costs, inspection fees. There's a lot of things that buyers paying for in that process. And all of a sudden you're going to say, oh, by the way, you need to pay me 2% of the purchase price or whatever it may be. That's a hard sell. And that's really a struggle right now for a lot of agents to communicate the value that we present. When they're a buyer's agent, hey, this is what I'm going to do for you. That's something that people in our industry need to get better at, need to really understand what their value is and how they are able to explain that to a buyer it's a whole new process right now. And that just went into effect on Monday. So
wow,
very new.
Yeah, brand spanking new.
Yeah.
So as if being a real estate agent and having enough forms to fill out wasn't complicated enough. Now let's turn it on its head a little bit and make it even harder for the buyer to get started here. Have you noticed
That's
any?
what it feels like.
I mean, and I know it's barely in the books, but you've been ahead of it a little bit. Have you noticed any reluctance from buyers to just call you up and say, "Hey, can I go look at a house?"
We just had one literally the first day that this was out there, and I have a teammate, Nathan Schwartz, who's doing a fantastic job. He understands his value, and he is able to communicate that. But for whatever reason, with this mother and son combination, we could not get that message over to them. And they were saying we're unscrupulous. They use different words, but we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And, I sent them, hey, this is the law. This is I can't remember what it was, but HE 1198, Indiana code. It's in the law now. We have to do this. This isn't us. And if somebody else is willing to show you this house without you signing this, they could be in big trouble. They could be fined and they could have their license suspended. So, if you run into that, be afraid of that, not be afraid of what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to sign a 1-day agreement that if you buy this house, we've already discovered what the commission is. Like, that's all it's going to be paid by the seller. Still wouldn't sign it. So I think there's going to be some buyers who have that fear, no matter how well you break it down, and they're going to exit the market.
Right.
And I don't see how that's good for anybody.
No, it isn't. It's one of those things. You did an excellent job of explaining it. You've been in real estate quite a while, and the vagaries of it, I can imagine a newer agent will have trouble explaining that to a buyer or to themselves.
Right.
Go in the mirror and explain it to yourself maybe for a while. But that certainly seems like it would make being a real estate agent less attractive.
I think certainly for new agents entering, because typically when you're a new agent, and this is a new experience, it's pretty hard for somebody to say, "Oh, you're brand new. Well, let me list my $500,000 house with you. I trust you." So you're typically working with buyers. You're often working with first-time home buyers who also don't understand the process. So again, that's where we're kind of hurting the people that need help the most. These newer agents that really need guidance and they need to get their feet wet so they can understand exactly what they're explaining. We're not giving them that opportunity. They're kind of getting hit with a bat right up front. So they're getting hurt. And then, of course, like I mentioned, your first-time buyers or, other buyers in general just aren't going to feel comfortable doing this. And I don't understand how it would be good for anyone to have a nation of renters. I think we had talked about that at one point before, and I'll just throw a number out there. The latest numbers that have come in, I believe, showed the average person that retires as a homeowner retires with a net worth of $400,000. The average person that retires after a lifetime of renting, $11,000. So you've got a gap there of $389,000. Again,
you're not in a stable financial situation with no. I mean, if you're relying on Social Security, that's social insecurity. Is what it's called most of the time. So,
I would say we don't need more wards of the state, and that's the danger that this could create. Is more people that don't have that nest egg, which that's what your home is. It's your number one. Typically, for most people, it is your most valuable asset. When you go to retire, that's where our money's coming from, is our equity in our home. Yeah. If we take that away from people, I don't like the thought.
Yeah, these laws. It could be intended, but definitely unintended consequences. If you're keeping buyer, we're trying to be nice here on Dollars from the Crawlspace. But back to your team just for a second. I wanted to touch on this. I forgot earlier, but you described how you got into it, how you started. Now you primarily listing, but you have a team member that does the other side of it.
Yep. So we're totally split in that way. I handle all listings and he handles all buyers. And we don't really have a lot of go-between. He hasn't done much in the commercial world, so I do handle buyers on the commercial side as well. But that's our agreement that we've got in place right now, and it's actually been a beautiful thing. It was hard to find somebody. At 13 years into this business, I've certainly thought before, hey, maybe I should talk to this person about it. And there's always a little something that, it's not quite the right fit. So again, Nathan Schwartz is his name, and my goodness, I got lucky. I don't know how else to say it. I had met Nathan actually at a car dealership. He was selling cars at that point. I think he would have probably been 19 or 20 years old. And I went and looked at a Subaru Impreza WRX STI, which, if you know what that is, it's not a car for an old man like me. It's a pretty fast. They're basically rally cars that are street legal. And so I go look at this thing, and Nathan follows up with me, and he goes, "Hey, wondered what you thought about that car." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to come back. I'm going to drive it again with my wife." So we did that and let it go for a couple of days. And he calls again. He goes, "Just wondering, about that car." I'm like, "You know what? I decided I'm an old man and I shouldn't drive a car like that." So, but his follow-up really, it stuck with me. And so it was about a year and a half later or so, he reached out to me again and said, "Hey, I'm getting licensed. I'm going to go into real estate and just wanted to pick your brain about some things. Can I buy you coffee?" So we go do that. We do it again a second time. And I said, where are you thinking about hanging your license? And he says, "I'm not going to say it, but it's this agency." And I'm like, "Well, before you do that, why don't you have a conversation with, Todd Stock at ReMax and see if ReMax is maybe a good fit for you." So he has that conversation, and that goes really well. And then I keep thinking about him like, this might be the kid. The more I talk to him, this might be the person that I can trust to share my business with. And so over many sushis, over many coffees, after about literally a month and a half of meeting with Nathan and talking, we said, let's just go for it. Mm-hmm. What I learned very quickly is there's no formula for, hey, this is how you build a team. This is what you do. So we just kind of, again, we talked and said, let's try this method right here. And it has been a wonderful blessing for me. I tell him all the time, he has changed my life. I don't really work less, but now I can focus on the things that I needed to be focusing on all the time. As far as doing different marketing tactics, reaching out to my sphere, building the business the way that I want. So here we are about 1 year into this, and my numbers already this year have almost caught my 12 months of all last year. And I think he's exceeded his expectations as well. I would hope that he would say it's been a huge blessing for him, but I really, really feel like that has, again, changed my life and for the better in many ways. So it's been great.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I don't attribute it to luck. I mean, you've put in your time, you've learned the business, you know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So I was interested that he didn't counter with that last phone call about, well, everybody has a midlife crisis and they need some kind of sports car, right?
He was probably thinking it. Oh, man. But I'm pretty good about putting the hammer down and being like, no. Yeah. I'm not real easy to talk into things, I don't think. Maybe I am.
Yeah. And he demonstrates there that he's not desperate for the sale, and he's not putting high pressure on, and he's not being, obnoxious and
never pushy. Just that was a conversation too that we had over and over and over again. I said, in this job, there will be temptations to maybe just fudge things a bit, just a little. And I said, just never, ever, ever, not once, because once you do it once, the floodgates are open. You're going to be tempted to do it again. So just keeping that ultimate high road. And it's one of the reasons that I've stayed at ReMax Results for my whole career, is because that's a top-down thing. The ownership there, every time I've gone to them with like, hey, here's a situation, that's always the response is, well, we're going to do this the right way, even if it costs us some money, even if it costs us a sale. That's not what's important. What's important right now is maintaining integrity and serving your clients. And so that was when I got Nathan. I said, hey, that's how I run my business. And if you're, thinking like maybe that's not something you're interested in, this isn't a good fit. That's number one. And then everything else kind of comes from there. So
I think that's really important when we hire here. We lay it on the line as here's what we stand for. Here's what we do before every meeting. Here's our core values. Mm-hmm. Do you think you can, does that fit you?
Yeah.
And if not, I hope you have a great life, but it's probably not going to work well for you here. Yeah. So we talked also before we came on air about some new legislation that's kind of making its way through D.C.
Yeah,
I mean, there's always something going on there.
Oh, yeah.
But how does that going to affect? Describe what that is, and how's that going to affect buyers?
Yeah.
Coming down the pike.
There's always legislation getting proposed, but the one that I'm most excited about was proposed by Senator Todd Young. And of course, the wheels move slowly in D.C. sometimes, and so this is about 2 years now in the making. But again, it's getting closer all the time to becoming a bill and getting voted on and hopefully passed into legislation. It's called the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. And what it does is kind of the opposite of what we're experiencing now, where we're at risk of losing some buyers from the market. This has definitely the opportunity to kind of create new buyers, new first-time homeowners. Mm-hmm. So the main purpose of the main thrust of it is let's look at blighted areas, of which In Elkhart County, we have some. I haven't looked at the map actually for LaGrange. I need to, but all over the United States and definitely all over Indiana, there are pockets where there are areas where you may see abandoned homes or homes that are run down, and maybe the slumlord has now moved in and he's renting everything in this whole block out and then everything looks terrible. So what this legislation is aimed to do is to give a tax savings to someone who would take a home like that and flip it and basically say, okay, right now you could buy that home for $30,000. It's going to cost $40,000 to put into it. You can sell it for $100,000. Well, that's not worth someone's time, right? To take all, the months it takes to rehab a home and all that cost. At the end of the day, they may not get the return that they would need to actually do that. Right. Well, if they were saving that short-term capital gains tax, maybe we can eliminate that or take a huge chunk of that out of there. Now it does make economic sense and financial sense for them to do that. So now we're creating it. And by the way, the home then has to be sold to an owner-occupant. Can't be sold, and turned into a rental.
Investor, yeah.
So now we've got somebody who's going to buy a home, who's going to maintain a home in a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of home ownership. As long as we keep increasing home ownership levels, everything else goes up too. Mm-hmm. Civic engagement, people being involved, volunteering in their community. Students, their achievement in high school, their dropout rates go way down. Their achievement goes way up. I mean, crime, I'm sure you could guess easily, crime goes way down. Everything else goes up. So if we can take some of these areas and build them up, that's just going to help everybody. For one, we need the housing. We need homeownership housing. We don't need more rentals. We need people that can we do need more rentals too, actually, to be fair, but we really need more homes for people to live in and to build that equity and to be responsible for. So that is the part. It has some other elements of it too. It doesn't have to be sold. It could actually be somebody that rehabs their own home. We can get some tax incentives for doing it that way too. Mom's been in the house forever and it needs a bunch of stuff. And if she puts it in there, she can get some tax benefits off that too. All right. So there's a lot of exciting things about it. I think I sure hope it's going to happen. Like I said, things tend to move slowly. As soon as I heard about this, I was like, let's vote. It's a no-brainer. Like, let's get behind this. Let's make this legislation.
Right.
But again, I think it's a well enough written piece of legislation and it does have enough co-sponsors. I think it eventually will be law. And that's certainly going to be something that affects us right here at home too. Okay.
Yeah. I think we can all think in our daily drives of areas that, would look better if they were fixed up and, anytime you own something, you're going to take care of it more than if you rent. Yeah. And that goes a long way to rebuilding. Well, not just cities, but areas that are blighted, like you mentioned. Awesome. Well, and that's called what again?
That's the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. There's actually a great website. If you Google it, it has its own website now, and it really walks you through really neat. And I think there is a map on there too that'll show you what pocket areas they're expecting to be included in that. Okay. And it kind of jigs and jags. It's not like all of, Elkhart or all of Goshen. It's just like these neighborhoods need some help. Yeah. So it really does a good job of identifying what needs the most help right now.
And that'll be a nationwide initiative, not just Indiana.
Correct.
So, but started by Todd Young. Mm-hmm. So awesome information, Nick. We admire your growth. I mean, you said you're an old man. I'm the one that watched you get into this, and I was there before that started. So we've seen where you started from and what where you're at now, and your eloquence in explaining the issues, and we appreciate that. And we need great people in real estate. So we appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thanks for telling
us everything about it. If anybody needs a great real estate agent, as long as you're prepared to sign a document ahead of time and need to go look at a house, give Nick and his team a call. They'd be glad to help you out or at least answer questions for you. I don't think you have to sign anything to answer a question, do you?
No, the questions are still free, thankfully. There's a lot we can do without having any documentation signed. If you're just thinking about making a move, call me up. I can come out and do a market analysis for you on your house. We can definitely give you some guidance. We actually have a seller's guide and a buyer's guide that are really well written and really break down what the process will be for you. So don't be afraid to reach out. You're not going to have to sign anything right off the first day, but before you go look at that first house, you will.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks again for watching today. Have a great day, everybody.